The Apostle Paul writes in his letter to Philippi, the 2nd chapter, these words: "If in Christ there's anything that will move you, any incentive toward love for one another, any fellowship in His Spirit, any warmth or sympathy, I appeal to you, make my joy complete by being of one mind, one in love, one in heart. Nothing is to be done out of jealousy or vanity. Instead, out of humility of mind, everyone should give preference to others, everyone pursuing not his own selfish interests, but those of others." Then he quotes an early church hymn: "Have this mind in you, which was in Jesus, who being in the form of God did not count equality with God something to be grasped at, but he emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, becoming as human beings are." Well, the darkening mornings and chill winds remind us that the earth has taken another spin around the sun, and we're confronted with those twin celebrations, the coming of the one we call Jesus and the going of another year of our lives. Men and women scramble, wondering if they'll get ready, whether they'll survive 13 parties in a row. Children are antsy with anticipation, wondering if the day will ever get here. Clergy are disgruntled, wondering how the holiday ever got away from them. Now, there's nothing new about that, I hasten to add. We have a letter written by an American bishop in the year 1827. "The devil has stolen Christmas," he writes. "The devil has stolen Christmas, the day of our festival redemption, and converted it into a day of worldly festivity, hooting and swearing." About hooting, I know nothing. Or believe it or not, there's this from the 4th century. Libanius in Rome writes, "The impulse to spend seizes everyone in this season. He who the whole year through has taken pleasure in saving and in piling up suddenly becomes wholly extravagant." So there's nothing new under the sun. So we say we got to try and keep God in Christmas, right? A couple living in a Manhattan apartment were pleased to find at their door one morning a lovely Christmas card which read, "God bless your Christmas with joy," from the custodial staff. They thought, how nice, put it on the stack and forgot it. A week later, they were surprised to find the same card again at their door, only this time it read, "God bless your Christmas with joy," from the custodial staff. Second notice. But what if that's not the right question at all? How do we keep God or Christ in Christmas? If we take the story seriously as a story about the ways of God with our world, we find nothing about human beings letting Him in or keeping Him out. We find rather a story about God powerfully active in His own time and in His own way. We hear about a God who can take care of Himself as far as this world is concerned, thank you, as far as you and I are concerned, who is always and everywhere present in some way or other. The question the story asks is, will we be alert to His coming when it does occur in our own lives? Will we be sensitive to His presence when He does make a move in our direction? This is the question of the old story, not about whether God exists, because we can't decide that question in some abstract neutrality, not about the nature of God, what He's like, because that question is and will remain beyond the capacities of mortal minds. Rather, the question, if God were to be real in our life, how would we know? What would it be like? What is God's presence to our world, to our lives, all about, after all? If you take that question to the old story, the answer is pretty consistent and simple. God is present as Word and Spirit. That is, God is present to our hunger for meaning, Word, and our longing for strength, Spirit, to handle whatever comes. The experience of a purpose that we didn't invent and a power not our own. That's the way God is present to us in life. When we know ourselves important to the universe, whenever we feel ourselves energized to fulfill that importance, we're in touch with the mystery that we call God. This is also why the old story insists that every human being is, in a way, searching for God. Human beings cannot exist, survive, truly live, unless they can feel that there is some meaning and point to their days here. Anton Chekhov, in his play The Three Sisters, one of his characters utters, I think, a profound truth about life without meaning. I think human beings have got to have some faith, she says, or at least he has got to seek faith, otherwise his life will be empty. How can you live and not know why the cranes fly, why children are born, why stars shine in the sky? You must either know why you live or else nothing matters. Everything's just wild grass, unquote. Why do young people on occasion turn self-destructive? Illness, clinical illness aside, not because they lack food, clothing, and shelter, that's apparent, but because they become overwhelmed with hopelessness, with lack of any purpose to their days. And then sooner or later, we need to find some way of coping beyond our natural energies. Someone has observed that we do not so much fear illness or accident or loneliness or failure or even dying. We fear even more whether we will be able to handle these. People appear in my study over the years. They begin by saying, I think I'm falling apart. I'm worried I might not be up to this. The trouble is, of course, that we look in the wrong places for this sense of purpose and energy. The compulsiveness of a lot of buying and accumulation suggests that some people vaguely, inchoately feel that if they do enough of it, it may fill up some void inside of them, give their lives something it lacks. Now, of course, none of us deliberately and consciously says to ourselves or to others, the meaning of my life is to earn as much money as possible in order to accumulate as much earthly goods as possible. We don't say that. Calvin and his favorite tiger Hobbes are walking along. Calvin is expounding on the meaning of Christmas. Yep, Christmas is just around the corner. And what better way to celebrate a religious holiday than with a month of frenzied consumerism? Hobbes says, I'm surprised some of the other religions haven't picked up on that. Calvin says, well, getting loads of loot is a very spiritual experience for me. But it's rarely conscious, more likely something we slide into rather than deliberately choose. Or some of us seek meaning in work, sheer work, a lot of work, compulsive work. Or we look for diversions to distract and fill us up a bit. The bears add a lot of both meaning and energy to life for some, or at least they once did. Nothing new about this, by the way. In the book of Maccabees, circa 150 BC, we read that the Greek games have been introduced into the holy city, into Jerusalem. And the complaint is abroad that even the priests are leaving their religious duties in the temple in order to attend the games. Now, I don't begrudge people these sources of excitement and purpose. It's safer than some other pursuits of meaning. But we will have meaning, or we will despair of life. I'm really not important. Those are deadly words in the very literal sense. And we need strength, coping resources beyond our natural juices. Sooner or later, we all hit the wall and we need some help. Nothing we want more than an energy boost. You watch the commercials. 50% of them offer us new energy. I've talked to people who use cocaine. I have, and they tell me you feel powerfully alive. You feel like you can handle anything. Why do kids drink when they get together on Saturday night? Not because they're thirsty. Because they feel socially inadequate or a little bit scared, and booze makes them feel big, makes them feel competent. And not just the kids. Strength, energy, the power to cope. This is the gift of all the gods. Unfortunately, the false gods, it betrays and destroys. When the true God is present to our lives, this is what we experience in healthy, life-giving ways. This is what heals us, makes us whole. These are the signs of His presence, new purpose in life, new power, again and again. Helen Keller, I think, says it as well as anybody. Born blind and deaf, you remember, but she matured through incredible struggle and challenge to give so much to our world. She writes, "Through trust in God alone, I fulfilled the two senses I lacked, sight and hearing. Trust has the ingenuity to bring me insight. I know where I am going. Could I win out on a half soul, seeing nothing but defiance, my awkward walk, my inability to do even the simplest thing unaided, no risk would be worthwhile. I would slide back into a devouring void, and the universe would crush me. In my doubly shadowed world, trust gives me reason for trying to draw harmony out of a marred instrument. Trust is not a cushion for me to fall back upon, it is my working energy." Note the words, a reason, energy. But if this is the case, then how does it happen? Wherein does life take on meaning and strength for you and me? Well, the Christmas story suggests, first of all, that it's really not at our disposal. We cannot plan or program it. We cannot ritualize it, command it. This is the way we would like it, wouldn't we? I want to know once for all what the meaning of my life is. Am I supposed to get married? Is business the meaning of my life, or social work, or motherhood? How can I manage vigor when I get up in the morning? Give me the formula, the mantra, the fix for life. Lay down the 7 habits of highly purposeful and genuinely powerful people. Just show me how to organize the project. Notice, if you will, how we go at Christmas. I mean, if we want God around any day of the year, we certainly want him there on Christmas Eve, don't we? We want everything right. Because if everything is just right, if everybody stays well, if we don't get irritable, if the dinner is beautiful, if the ambiance is perfect and the night lovely, then guess what? We'll all feel good and inspired and know peace of God. So we set out to manipulate and control the spirit of the occasion, organize and manage the scene and those around us, and in our determination and desperation, we almost guarantee that it will not come off. Because the spirit of Christmas is like the wind. It blows where it will, and no one knows from whence it comes and where it goes, saith Jesus. Let me pass on my favorite Christmas pageant story. Yale professor, university professor, tells the story of his 4-year-old son in nursery school who brought home one day the notice that he was to be in a Christmas pageant and that the parents were to take advantage of, quote, this great cultural opportunity, unquote. Well, these particular parents decided they were above that. They didn't need to take advantage until a second notice arrived that their son was playing the part of a shepherd in the pageant. So they decided maybe they ought to show. The pageant met all of their expectations. It was awful. The house light dimmed, and 3 Virgin Marys emerged from the wings and stood over a box of straw and waved to their relatives in the audience. The professor says he wondered if some new religious doctrine was being promulgated with 3 Marys until his wife whispered to him that several people in fact, had given the school 3 brand new Mary costumes, and so some crazy logic indicated that all 3 of them should be used. A moment later, 2 Josephs took their place next to the 3 Marys and stood scratching themselves. The next entrance was made by the angels. 20 little girls floated on stage wearing glowing gowns and immense wings. And then down the aisle came the shepherds dressed in burlap robes. At this point, low comedy became fiasco. Seems that during the rehearsals, the director had wisely placed chalk marks on the stage for positioning the angels and shepherds so as to achieve some degree of symmetry. Each of them was to stand on their assigned chalk mark. This had worked beautifully in rehearsal with the kids wearing their everyday clothes, but now with the huge angel wings, there wasn't enough room. Each angel took up not only her own mark, but a shepherd's mark as well. So when the shepherds came down the aisle and began claiming their territory, the result was much pushing and shoving and tonguing of angel wings. Finally, one little shepherd, instantly recognized by the professor and his wife as their own son, turned to the audience and shouted at the top of his lungs, "These pushy angels are fouling up the whole show." Professor says, some people thought the pageant was ruined. Yet there were others, including myself and my wife, who considered it the most Christmassy of all the Christmas pageants we'd ever seen. For you see, the very first Christmas was not at all the serene scene of the Christmas cards and the carefully planned choreography of the Crystal Cathedral. It was a mess, a chaotic, unorganized mess filled with human need and indifference, mortal stubbornness and despair. And it was right there that God was most present, and it is right there that He's always most present. But most of us will miss Him for the incongruity of it all. But those who are open, like lowly shepherds and crazy seers, who respond with humility and wonder, they will discover where meaning and power really lie. They will experience it for themselves. I mean, look at that scene before the Last Supper, fateful night, before He'll go His way to death on the morrow at the hands of the really impressive and the really important. A little matter of dusty feet, and not one disciple of His willing to do the dirty, incidental service before supper that the law required, the law of God. Where are the disciples? They're consumed with their own thoughts and desires. They're worrying about their status in the kingdom coming. And where is Jesus? Worrying about them. And so it says, Jesus, knowing that He had come from God and was going to God, took a basin and a towel and did the simple, needful thing, washed their smelly feet, and said, if you learn to do this in life, you will know what meaning and strength are really all about, and you will be happy, you will know joy. I mean, consider it. What if we miss the major meaning of our lives because meaning does not lie finally in our plans and projects, our crusades and careers, important and necessary and inevitable as these may be? On the whole, though, we manage quite well there on our own. What if the real purpose and energy comes as we're open to the small touches and tasks that bump into us in the course of any day? I shall never forget a mentor who said to me once, for years I bemoaned the untold interruptions which stood in the way of my ministry, until one day I realized that the interruptions are my ministry. The dinner was planned that night, but the need to get the dirty feet clean before dinner was an interruption for Jesus. In fact, if you read His story, Gospel of Mark, for example, it's just one interruption after another. The interruption of this human question, the interruption of that human need. But what if this is the real truth for all of us, the ultimate purpose and dynamic of life? God presents Himself to us most often in the interruptions. In the spouse who's feeling low, in the child whose heart is hurting, in the colleague whose world has collapsed, in the neighbor or stray who needs the cup of cold water. What if this is where God really intrudes and addresses us? As we, bit by bit over the years, learn to live this, we begin to experience what we all want so much, that we really are important, significant to God and to one another, and we can manage just about everything that life throws at us. Several years ago, as he got off the train at Grand Central Terminal each morning to go to his job on Wall Street, Gene Estes began noticing an increasing number of people who seemed to be living there. He couldn't help, after several mornings, notice one person in particular who was always there, a woman in her 40s apparently with a black poodle. Finally, he followed his impulse. Their introduction was simple. Hello, my name is Gene. Hello, my name is Patricia Kersey. Pat, this is Ebony. Patricia, what are you doing here? I live here. With this moment, Gene Estes entered the upside-down world of the homeless. Meanwhile, Miss Kersey and her dog attracted the attention of a freelance photographer nearby, who then got the homeless woman and the investment banker hooked up with a church-sponsored program in Manhattan called the Jericho Project. It's still there, by the way. It now has 4 centers, and you can visit it on its website, the Jericho Project. Anyway, for Miss Kersey, the Jericho Project meant a home in a leased hotel on Manhattan's Upper West Side and some rehabilitation. For Gene Estes, it became a new life, not only as a member of the board, but meeting with the tenants one by one night a week, giving counsel and financial advice, but more important for him, getting to know and really care about people from a very different world than his own. But you know, nobody has to tell Gene Estes that his life has meaning or energy. Now, he knows. So does that mean we have to go to work for the homeless? Not at all. It's not the point. It does mean that our God is after us, and he'll sooner or later interrupt our life in some unexpected way, like a baby in a feed trough, or a homeless lady in a train station, or some dirty feet that need cleaning. God rarely passes by someone who stays available. So you see, the question is not whether God is there for us. Christmas settled that. The good news is, he is. The question is whether we are there for him when he calls. And that question only you and I can answer day by day, one by one. Amen.